Is it, what do we call this, a fishbowl?
Fishbowl.
Fishbowl. Good evening, everybody. My name is Stephen Dunbar Johnson, and as President International of the Times, it is my great honor and pleasure to welcome you to the Times building and to this Climate Forward Thought Leadership session that is supported and enabled by Fondation L'Oréal, to whom we are very grateful. And what an amazing collection of impressive people we have in this room. This is fantastic. Our theme this evening is stepping into the clearing, the bigger picture of women and climate action. So we've spent nearly a week reminding ourselves of the urgency of climate change. And across discussions, a common theme is clear. We need to move away from siloed approaches if we are to effectively embrace systemic solutions that address the interconnected nature of the crisis we face. And yet, we are too often trying to address the impacts of the crisis and seeking solutions without considering the gender dynamics at play and leveraging women's leadership. While the topic of gender and climate is starting to enter the mainstream and forward-looking initiatives do exist, there is an urgent need to scale solutions. And solutions is the operative word this evening. We want our discussions to focus on fixes. But to frame the challenge, we know climate change places an unequal burden on women, and I trust that you know the underlying and unsettling statistics. In fact, I don't trust, I know many of you in this room do know. Women face differentiated impacts from increasing poverty and food security, risks of displacement, and increasing levels of gender-based violence. At the same time, women are underrepresented in decision-making and investment, limiting our collective ability to develop effective solutions at pace and at scale. Pervasive gender norms and structural inequalities, from insufficient legal protection to actively discriminatory laws, further obstruct women's opportunities to lead on climate action. Despite these barriers, especially those on the front lines of climate change, are leading the creation and implementation of sustainable solutions. Women report higher levels of interest in sustainability than men and are being quicker to recognize that the status quo will not bring us to the future we need and the transformation required to get there. In the complex web of challenges surrounding climate change, women's perspectives are paramount if we are to develop truly effective and inclusive solutions. So looking at the challenges and opportunities at this complex intersection, it is clear that this isn't a conversation of women versus men. Rather, it's about all of us and engaging all of the talents to help us get to where we need to be. So today's conversation is not about why women's leadership is critical. It is. But rather how to scale women's contributions to what the biggest existential threat humanity has ever faced. And we intend to make this evening session as interactive as possible, especially considering the remarkable depth and breadth of talent and experience and the considerable smarts that we have in this room. But to start off on our solutions-focused conversation, and again, solutions-focused conversation, we have an esteemed panel comprising of Dr. Omar Obama, the founder and director of the Omar Obama Foundation. We have here Bridget Burns, Executive Director, Women in Environment and Development Organization. We have Nidhi Pant, co-founder, Science for Society, Technologies, and member of the Women Climate Collective. And of course, we have Alexandra Palt, Vice President of Fondation L'Oréal. So I'm going to start a quick fire question and then one follow-up question for our panelists before handing over to Alexandra, who's going to corral everybody and engage the whole room. And I'm going to then take a back seat, as I should, before coming back at the end. So let's activate everyone's imaginations around visions of a greener, more inclusive future. The first question I have, and this is to all of you. Now, I'm going to start, though, Bridget, perhaps you can start off. If you could wave a magic wand, what would women's involvement in climate leadership look like, considering the focus of your work?
Thank you. Hello?
It's on.
Hello? Okay. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. One of the things that I was asked in terms of this vision was to try to do it in one sentence. And as someone who is always thinking about the carbon budget, I'm going to try to do that so that we have more time to be really thinking about these solutions together. For me, this is really about ushering in a sea change in the distribution of resources and power. It's a full-scale shift away from harm. And by harm, I'm very clear in meaning a shift away from fossil fuel extractive capitalism. And that includes then working together and investing in a radical reimagining of a world centered on care. That's my definition and my vision.
That is pithy. That's fantastic. Thank you. Dr. Obama.
Right, in one sense.
Maybe two.
I think, for me, I think it's a change of consciousness. I honestly believe that we as women need to change how we view ourselves in the community and what position we take. We don't get given the position, we take the position. And that's my problem. It doesn't matter what expertise we have, where we're coming from, what our backgrounds are. As women, we tend to step back and let the men lead. So I think it's about focusing on ourselves and a change of consciousness.
That's a powerful one. Thank you. Nidhi.
My hope would be that women farmers are also considered as women leaders, and they are fairly rewarded, and they have shared prosperity in what they've helped us build. And as partners to all of us in climate change, they are also treated with dignity. They have the same opportunities that we all have, and they have freedom of choice. And I think that would be my hope for all the women that we work with.
So this is leveraging the power of the women farmers that you're working with.
Yes.
The collective power. Thank you. Alexandra.
So I think I thought a lot about that question because it's difficult to improvise on that question. And actually, I thought that actually for me it is that we will have next generation leadership, not just women leaders, but the next generation of leadership. And that means because women can be very bad leaders, as you know, as bad as men can be bad leaders. So we need next generation leadership. And that will come if we listen to the 90% of the world to which we don't listen now. And a large part of this are women, and a large part of this are people from the global south and minorities in countries. So I think it is for me really about next generation leadership.
So you've all expressed the vision that you aspire to. What therefore are the things, the ingredients that are needed to turn that vision into a reality? Again, can we start with you?
Yes, it's an honor to be able to speak about the work that we does in this space. We are an organization that was founded at the understanding that these intersections were so critical, and yet women's voices were often absent from the spaces of decision making, and the outcomes themselves were not understanding the systemic nature of how all of these issues are so interconnected. So we've worked for decades with so many of you in this room, so it's really wonderful to be here, to build a platform to advance gender equality and human rights, particularly seeing the site of multilateralism, multilateral environmental agreements, major climate financing instruments as a potential site for change, not that change comes from the top, but that we can build power in all spaces in order to make change. We have a framework at our organization where we are addressing this crisis by moving power, moving money, and moving minds to shape a just and sustainable future. So we know we find ourselves in a moment that demands deep systems change, and achieving climate justice requires challenging power at multiple levels. Yes, representation matters, as we, I think, have all pointed out here. Women, especially from most vulnerable climate countries, still face significant barriers to decision-making, and participation rates are stagnating. The current trajectory in the climate change negotiations of achieving gender balance won't be achieved until 2042, which is in light of having multiple decisions that say this is a problem, as well as multiple actions, including from my own organization, that has worked to train and fund and support women from global majority countries to be front and center in those spaces. So we have to be clear that that current change of pace is far too slow. And we also have to understand that we cannot talk about this issue in a homogeneous way. Real transformation requires understanding intersecting identities. So it's not just women that are underrepresented in leadership, it's women from global majority countries, it's indigenous women, it's grassroots women activists, those who are both facing the harshest impacts to climate and who have the solutions. We see this time and time again, that they have the solutions and should be centered in these discussions. But you will hear from Nidhi as well, those solutions are often deemed too small and not worthy of a diversity of scale that needs to be invested in across communities. So we do consistently works to bridge this gap. We work to coordinate grassroots voices, building collective power, and amplify the perspectives of frontline communities in global policy arenas. And I say this is a mantra that has guided our organization. We are not here to merely mainstream women's participation into a polluted stream. We are pushing for feminist leadership, leadership rooted in justice. Equal representation is not enough without rights, without resources, and without justice. So we need to systemically change and fundamentally shift the way power operates, moving away from fossil fuel capitalism to decentralized, renewable energy systems that power thriving local economies and respect human rights. And one message I really want to leave us with is that this work is deeply political. There's a scholar, Kara Daggett, who talks about how misogyny and extractivism are intertwined. They're both deeply embedded in authoritarian movements that we see on the rise around the world. There's a concept that she talks about called petromasculinity, and it reminds us that fossil fuels are not just an environmental issue, but one of power and control, especially over marginalized communities and women. So those same folks that have been platformed in this very space, who dismiss climate change as merely bad weather, are also the architects of a growing anti-gender movement, threatening women's rights here in the United States and around the world. So we have to center, as we move into the clearing, as we step into the clearing, conversations on women in climate, that this is both about inclusion as well as us demanding and radically imagining together what a world centered on care is. And I say that because I think if you are looking for the first step into this space, know that in the ecosystem, there are already a number of amazing constellations of folks who are doing this work. We have a robust constituency who engage in the global policy space of the climate change negotiations, called the Women and Gender Constituency, bringing this analysis across issues of finance, mitigation, adaptation. We have a gender and environment data alliance that's trying to bring the data and the research together to be able to influence policy and national planning. We have campaigns that are trying to figure out how we resource the front line and direct resources to community organizing. And this is really, I think, where the heart of those solutions lie. So I will stop there.
That's fantastic, very comprehensive. The challenge is that you've raised so many issues there that need lots of chewing on. But Dr. Obama.
I'll just stay with the basics. I have a children's foundation. I work with children and young people between the ages of 4 and 25. And one of the things for me that is really, really important in the work that we do is that it's very inclusive. So it's about the girls, definitely not leaving them behind, but also the boys need to come along because they are the other half of us. And one of the things that for me is key, and I know you're talking from the top end, and that's really, really important as well, but in parallel, for me, education is really the crux of how we get this sorted. How do we educate our girls? And that's a big part of our work. My foundation is called, actually, not just our Obama, that's just an aside. It's called Sautiku Foundation, which means powerful voices. So the young girls learn to have powerful voices to be able to be part of decision-making and taking their own lives into their own hands. And this applies for not just climate change and the environment, it applies to everything that they do. And this is why my work to me is a work that I do with a lot of passion, because, there but by the grace of God go I. We all have managed to make it and become who we are as women, but we had that little extra because society didn't help us. The system doesn't help. It doesn't favor the girl child. It just throws you in there and figure it out. And what we try to do is consciously make the girl child aware of her role, not just talk about the fact that she shouldn't be left behind, but she too must be responsible and accountable. So again, I'm keeping it very basic. I could mention all the people we work with and how we work, but for me, key is in this discussion, and I know when we came in, we were told we know what the problems are, it's just how we're going to solve them and how we're going to resolve them. We're having meeting after meeting, conference after conference, international, local, regional, etc. But even if we get the next generation young people, if we don't change how we socialize our girls, how we educate our girls, it's not going to change. Well, it's the girls. The boys are cool. They'll take what they want. No, in reality, boys will take what they want. Men will take what they want because society is geared that way. They're not afraid. And if they have to wing it, they'll wing it. And us as women, we tend to hold back and let the men take the lead. And this is what I'm saying that needs to happen at a very low level, whether it's grassroots or it's in the Western world. We need to start focusing on that.
Educating girls will arm them with a magic wand that allows them to
consciousness, not just the educating in terms of science, maths, etc., but also the consciousness to say, I'm not going to step back, I'm not less. Because society, I say this every time when I talk to women, we have these men, we give birth to them. We breastfeed them for whatever time we do. We have them on our bodies. What are we whispering to them that by the time they're 14-year-olds, they think they're better than us? I mean, come on, ladies. And that's why I insist on talking about the basics, because we can coach it and be whatever, but we have certain insecurities that society make us have, so we always step back, always. Kamala Harris is now going to possibly be president by chance. Let's have it. Let's put it out there. Not because people chose her because she's a woman. If she was going to stand and try to be elected as a woman just as she is, she probably wouldn't make it. So come on, ladies. Let's go back to basics and say, what do we need to change in our society in order to, when we become as qualified as we are in this room, we're there because we were always like that, not because we had to fight.
Great. Needy.
And I also work with smallholder farmers and women, and they're powerful women, powerful women.
For me, I think one thing which is very important is that we meet everyone, the women leaders, where they are. It's very important to invest and create solutions, products that are very centered towards them. It matches their needs. We don't we have a solution-centric mindset, and we just be married to the problem and not to our solution, and have opportunities. So just giving you an example that smallholder women farmers in India don't have land ownership. Historically, the land either is to their brothers, goes to their brothers, or to any male member in the family. And what this does is that the women are not included in the financial ecosystem. They can't have access to credit. They don't have any collateral if they want to start any new business. So how are they going to have opportunities to either support their family, and they end up working as farm laborers? Mobility is another challenge, that if they have to go out and earn an income, for them to travel outside their villages, it's a big challenge. You don't have, you only can go with your husbands, or you don't have the right transportation taking you out of your village. These are some systemic challenges that they face that are keeping them totally outside. They have barriers that they are not, that is making it challenging for them to access opportunities. So it's very important to, at least the way we look at it is that we meet them where they are, providing livelihoods to them, stay at their village level, working with them so that they can get bank loan. And in all of this, we need to first prioritize their needs. I don't see my journey as very different from a smallholder women farmer. When I graduated at the age of 20, everyone thought that the business that I run either is of my father, or I was married to someone, and I was also denied the same loan by the bank because they thought that, okay, I don't have any income, or I don't have any collateral that will help me get a loan. So the challenges that I'm facing versus a smallholder farmer Anita is facing is so similar, and it's so important that there are platforms like Women Climate Collective that is actually meeting us where we are. They are offering us mentorship. We are being provided with right resources. So I think I'm trying to do the same for the community that I'm working with, for smallholder farmers, and whether it is different stakeholders like banks coming together, or is it the government that we are working with. It's all, everyone has a role to play. Everyone understands that there is a potential in each one of us. And and what we ask for is sponsorship, and sponsorship is not necessarily money. It's just the opportunities that we get, and I think that's the most important. That I think we are going to get to our vision if we unlock these opportunities for everyone, and we do it for each other. How say Foundation L'Oreal does for us. We do it for others, and we pay it forward.
You're a living, breathing example of a woman who is being the change. You're exactly what Dr. Obama has said. So what you've done is what you've done and what you're doing is remarkable. Alexandra.
Yeah, so I think I try to make the transition because there are so many women in this room and men also who can contribute to this conversation. So I think what is very important is that, yes, we need system change. You talked about we need change on the educational level from the start. And then what I found throughout my career personally, but also when we work with L'Oreal Foundation to give the voice to women, is that, yes, you have the first starting points of understanding, having the expertise, starting to sit at the table. But even when you sit at the table, your view is not forcibly valued. And there comes in the education of the boys. That's what I wanted to say. What you said with what do we tell them that at 14 they think they are better than us? But so we need that the women's point of view can be valued, and then that they have part in the decision. And that's the aim that, so Rachel has piloted. So if you want to discuss afterwards with her, a very interesting study on what are the most important barriers for women to be actors in the climate field. And so, of course, there are all the educational, all the systemic, but there is also something about even when you sit at the table, your view is not valued. And if your view is valued, very often you are not part of the decision. And I think that is really the thing that we want with our initiative to change. So helping women to sit at the table, have their voice, and be part of the decision making. And we all agree that we need that, I think. So
in that spirit, I'm going to step back and invite more women to the table and hand over to you.
Thank you very much. So, yes, please. And then we'll hand over to the...
I just wanted to respond to that because I wanted to say that if you start early within the education system, then the boys are also that young. So it just becomes a way of life that you listen to each other. You have conversation, you interact on a level that is more human and not so gender-based, because that is where we need to move to. And if you start early, because my problem is always the fact that when we come to the table and every conversation I hear around it, and I call myself really, and please don't get shocked, I don't call myself a feminist. I call myself a humanist. I'm a human. Get to know me as a human first, then follows that I'm an African and I'm a woman as well, which I'm proud of both, but treat me like a human. And the thing is, I have the sense that we're always asking, that we don't get heard, that we should be part of, etc. I don't ask. Because I come into the room as a human.
And we should talk about privilege here also.
No, it's not privilege. I work with rural Kenyan children who really, they think they're poor because they don't have running water and electricity. And all they need to have is a voice to realize that their future belongs to them and that every opportunity is possible and poverty is no excuse. Once they understand that, because most of us who are former colonies, we came from poverty. We managed to go to Harvard and all those schools and make it. So the idea of coming from privilege is the wrong way to go, because most of our communities, the young people who make it, come from poorer communities. It's the mindset. It's the consciousness.
I think a lot of us here have experienced to be not heard, even if we try to be heard or not be part of the decision. So I would like you, I think most of us agree to say this is important. Not because intrinsically women will lead better, but because we represent an experience, a reality of life that we know, experience, people from diversity has to be included everywhere. So we agree on that. We also agree that we have to fight climate change. And still, my first question to you is, why didn't we succeed to create the sense of urgency we need to create? Not just on women's rights, but also on climate change, biodiversity loss, on so many issues. So if we have to talk about the sense of urgency that we need to build to make the needle move, who in the room wants to take that question and has a beginning of an answer or an idea on that? So there are many, many women in this room. I cannot cite everybody. You have something to say, please.
Should you not come and sit and...
Yes, please.
You said something very important, and that's taking up space. So I am taking up space. I think that one of the most important things that we have to think about is indigenous peoples. We're not taking them into consideration at all. As an Afro-Indigenous woman myself, I am very connected to a lot of indigenous elders who pushed me to start my own organization called Grace of Wisdom, which is built to put as many indigenous elders to have a seat at the table. Oftentimes, organizations come for a photo op, and that's it. There's no exchange. Indigenous peoples take 6% of the world, and they are in charge of 80% of the biodiversity of the world. They're taking care of us. So what are we doing in exchange?
So how do you create the sense of urgency that people take this into account?
Let's open the door for them, and let's have them in spaces like this. And they have tools, they have strategies. They work with nature.
Okay, so has somebody else, perhaps Maya, come please to the table. So Maya Penn, you're an activist and entrepreneur. Thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you.
So I've been doing work as a climate solutionist for 16 years. Even though I'm 24, I started this work at 8 years old. And I've always been, through my nonprofit, incredibly focused on the overlap between both sustainability and gender equity. And something that I definitely agree on, Dr. Obama, is
it really is a mindset shift that is required. Many of us have seen the data on when women and girls have greater access to education, that increases the climate resiliency of their entire communities. And I think through my work, I've spoken at the Kisaruni Girls School in Narok, Kenya, or all the way to schools in Atlanta, Georgia. And something I see across the board is the need to normalize both sustainability and gender equity. And that's why I really agreed with what you said, because I think people need to understand that climate action is not a niche or something for, them to fix. A lot of people are, especially a lot of young people, feel very much like they are not qualified or have enough expertise to participate in this space. As much as we have seen incredible movements, intergenerational movements, including Generation Z and younger in this space, I still see a lot of young people who feel incredibly intimidated by having their voice heard in both spaces. And so many of our ancestors, especially in communities in the Global South, Black, Brown, Indigenous communities in the Global North, have grown up utilizing and living through sustainability before it was even a word. So I think making both not feeling niched to the general public is very crucial to having more general participation from people of all ages.
Thank you very much, Maya. So, you want to respond to that?
I did. One thing that I think is really important in terms of this, how do we make this urgent? That's been coming up a lot for me this week, is that urgent can't necessarily equal fast, or it does, but it means critical, because the work that we are asking for here, if done too fast, we will replicate inequalities, we will cause harm. We've talked a lot about shifting to a renewable energy economy, but we have to recognize that more than half of the critical minerals needed for that shift are on or near indigenous lands. And if we do this without intention, without care, we will replicate those inequalities. And so I think that part of building the case for urgency is in this: how do we reimagine and how do we have that shift towards what the vision of an alternative future could look like? And it's about getting folks excited about something that is invested in education, in healthcare, in public transport, in better communities, in care-centered communities. It's about building that imaginary for people so that we make sure that while we recognize the urgency, we don't cause harm in that transition.
Thank you very much. You want to add on something?
I want to say something. First, I want to say thank you so much, because exactly what you're saying is what I'm trying to express, and maybe not as elegantly as you did. But in terms of the urgency, I agree totally with you. It's not about being faster. In fact, I ask the question constantly of the West: where are you hurrying to? We need to slow down, because we need to stop and think and realize where we want to go so that we get it right. And one of the other things is there's a new buzzword or term called circular economy. And I keep telling everybody, you guys, circular economy is what and I consider myself indigenous because I don't understand really what indigenous is in this context, because I'm African, I come from Africa, I have my own culture. Does that make me indigenous? I'm going to call myself indigenous. So in our culture, for thousands of years, just as the Native Americans and other indigenous communities, we kept the earth healthy. We kept the air clean and the waters clean. But we were told that our lifestyle was primitive. We were not civilized. And one of the things about not going faster is maybe having humility and saying, why don't we look over our shoulder and see what are the others doing? How did they get it right? In my lifetime, with my 29 years old forever, and my grandmother recycled even the first plastics that came into being. She reused them to use as containers, etc., etc., etc. And it's only with the entry of the plastic bag that it really got really bad. then it was, you couldn't, no turning back. So what we would like to appeal for, and this is what my foundation does, we use traditional methods, for example, for crop growing, kitchen gardens, which were a tradition in our communities, how you build your homes so that they go earth to earth, that if it gets spoiled, you don't have to use cement, all the manufacture, production, consumption that is happening in the West. We are saying we don't want, I am saying, of course the majority want it because it's a lifestyle. You've got a better standard of living if you live like the West. We need to stop and think and say, what did they do that was right? Because in the last 300, 400 years, and our time is just in about 150, 200 years, we messed up our environments by trying to be Western. So no offense to anybody, but maybe that's what we mean when we say, slow down.
Thank you very much. So perhaps, thank you very much, Maya. Perhaps let's go to another. We have just 15 minutes left. It is a passionate conversation, and so many of you, I hope we have the time afterwards to exchange a little bit and discuss. But when you talked a little bit about the difficulties you met when you started in that space, so is anybody wanting also to talk about the experience, yes, please, that women face when they enter the climate space and when they want to sit at the table and make decisions?
Yes, thank you. And also, I think it's also good for
Rhonda from Project
Dandelion. I think it's also great that women just take a seat at the table and don't always ask to have a seat at the table. So I'm so glad to be able to sit here, and so glad to be able to see you and all the work that is being done. I feel in many ways, Project Dandelion, we have just made it so complex for people to jump into this space. We make it so individualized that people feel, what can I do, instead of what can we do together? And I guess I just want to push back a little bit. I actually think we're not moving fast enough. I actually would say that the indigenous women in the Amazon forest don't think we're moving fast enough. That the holders, the mothers of our forests and the things that are going on want us to move faster. Well, I mean, I think what you're talking about is a value system, which I think is really important. I believe that climate justice intersects every justice, and I think that that's right. And I think the value system is we have to go into it in a just way. And certainly in the global south, we see this all the time, where people who are starving are being asked to give their land away, and a number of different things that are intolerable. But, I just want to say a moment about the dandelion, and thank you for those who are wearing the dandelion. It's a women's-led movement, but the dandelion is the only flower or weed that lives on every continent in the world. It is, some people call it a weed. You can't get rid of it. If there's just a little bit left, it grows back right away. And this is what we as women have to do. If we are outside the rooms, we're like a dandelion. You want to get rid of us? We'll come back. We will do that. We're resilient. We're also regenerative. I think that that's it too. And our sole mission is to spread each other's ideas. So I think that from all the research that we've done, 89% of people believe governments should do more to be more involved in this. So how can we push leaders to do more during the short-termism? And how can we move the mark? So I'm a big believer that if you want to get anything done, bring your girlfriends with you to make it happen. And that is what
point.
And that is what Project Dandelion is. So anyway, so that's my point. We need to decode the complexity, and we need to make it easier.
So thank you very much. I feel you want to come into the circle, but I would like you to react a little bit. So everybody wants to speak, and that is great. Yeah, and I would love to make everybody speak. I have a sign of 12 minutes left, no, but you shouldn't leave. How important was mutual support and support from a women's group and Sisterhood, and how important was that in your project, and how did the network, did that help? Did that make a huge difference for you?
Absolutely. I think one very important thing is that we can be very vulnerable with each other. We can really share the challenges where we feel that we are lacking. If we just, at the end of the day, just want to rant out to anyone, you're having a bad day, you have an ecosystem that supports you, not only with opportunities, but in your own personal leadership journey. So in our Women's Climate Collective cohort, we would be that for each other. We are a support system to each other. Second is that network also of environmentalists, people with different expertise. I am a chemical engineer, but I'm doing entrepreneurship. But there is someone who helps me with impact measurement in our cohort. There is someone who works with youth and gender. If I want to expand into other geography, they are the ones actually supporting me. And if there is an opportunity that I know, I can pass it on to them. So this network has not only provided us with a safe space, but also is helping us grow in this, in all our works. So we are there for each other personally, and we are also there for each other together, solving this challenge of climate.
So now we have very little time left, and I have still 4 or 5 more people I would love to make speak. So Sarah, please.
I'll be very quick.
Yeah, everybody has to be really short now, because otherwise we are missing on some really interesting contributions. So please.
I'll be very quick. I just wanted to speak to what you were saying about women power, but also what men and people in power can do to empower and uplift us to take our space back. So I've worked for a very long time in the climate movement, and actually back in 2001, the boys set up an all-girls climb team, and I used to get arrested quite a lot. The media, we did an action, we got arrested for scaling a warship in Sydney Harbour, and according to the media, it was 2 men scaled a warship today. I was one of those men. But it was the foresight of the boys in the actions team back in 2001 to set up an all-girls team, and the media can do that also in politics. I mean, it's so, I'm shocked at the US in the sense that who keeps putting so many men on TV and so many orange weird ones? Can't we change that? I mean, so I just think there's things that people in power can do. And I want to say thanks because I'm so nervous. Even
No, that's among us. Thank you very much, Sarah. Please, Crystal, also very short, please.
Yes, hello everyone. I am actually full-blooded Native American. I come from the Navajo Nation, and there seems to be a lot of talks here of inclusive of indigenous people. I myself grew up on the reservation without running water. My community still does not have running water on our reservation. In fact, data shows that Navajo tribe uses the least amount of water, 2 gallons per day, and we pay the most amount of water on our reservation. And so just looking at the lens from the Navajo perspective, just even think about the sacredness of water. All of us that were born, our first 9 months of life, were in the womb with water. And reframing of how the connection of the human life to different elements is really important on the messaging. And indigenous voices like myself, I'm not a climate change fighter per se, but a lot of our elders in our communities are, we have to be in this space. We have to be in these rooms with decision makers. So
thank you very much, Kristen. Thank you. And I think you touched upon something really important, that is how we have to change the narrative. And that's something on which we also have to go faster than we do, to make a different perspective heard on this, because the narrative we tell now on climate change fighting is not mobilizing people, and there is so much more to say about that. Sybil, and then I invite in other friends, and then we have to wrap up, I know. Thank you so much, Sarah. Please, Sybil.
I'll be quick. And so for me, I work with young women and teaching them ethical entrepreneurship. So for them in the climate space, it's about creating innovative entrepreneurship that is solving issues. But they come in the space knowing they have to have the table and bring a chair. And you said the urgency, but it's the urgency of now. And one theme that we're not really hitting specifically is power concedes nothing without demand. And we demand it, and you hit it on the head. So the key to me, and I think we've seen a little bit in the news, mobilization. If we have mobilization
and they see the power of water, and they see the power that we have and how we come in numbers. And I think a best example right now, Kamala Harris, right? It was the numbers that made people pay attention. How much money and resources was she able to raise as a woman coming to the table? And that's the kind of mobilization we need in the climate space.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, Harji, you also want? Please, please, come, please. We have, you know, it's great that a lot of people want to come in the circle. I love it. So I would love to extend a little bit, but I don't think that this is possible. But 5 minutes is okay if we make 5. But if you want to come in the space, please really come. This is among us, so feel comfortable. So you were first here, Kathy.
Yes, thank you. I would add to the mobilization organization, getting organized and holding organizations accountable. And She Changes Climate did that with a really important event around COP28 and holding people accountable.
Let's recall that COP28 was an all-male piloting committee in the beginning?
That, yes. Generally, all of them, yes. Generally, all of them. But a particular moment where a leader in climate was held accountable. And I think accountability is one of the main things we have to hold. And it takes personal courage. It takes a lot of courage. The second idea is that we need to have psychological safety for each other. And when Kamala Harris came to life the next day after President Biden said, "I will not run," the CEO of Zoom organized a Zoom for 42,000 women to come together for her the next day. And so a woman, it moves me, a woman of color put 42,000 women on a Zoom in 24 hours so that they could get organized for a woman of color to run and be our first female president. And we can do it when we stick together, when we have psychological safety and we hold each other accountable.
Right. Thank you very much. Well, that would almost be perfect also to finish on that, but we will continue because this is so. Please, and then I think we are more than 5 minutes over, and I think you have to stop us because otherwise this is going on. We'll be here.
Yeah. So I think we should just stop and reflect for a while. Let's understand what has the style of leadership for the last centuries brought us into. We need to dismantle status quo. We can't operate the way we have been operating. We are in a crisis because of the leadership style. We are in a crisis because it was greed that determined where we want to go. We need to change this. So number one, this recent review of the SDG shows that it will take 130 years to get gender parity, the rate at which we are going. Obviously, we need to change that. We need to change leadership from politics to climate negotiation, to local governance. We need to change leadership. We need to change the leadership style from greed to care, from exclusion to inclusion. And this is only possible when we get, somebody said about the feminine energy into leadership.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Harsh, please.
A lot has been said. So I think it's important to recognize that whether we talk about climate crisis, biodiversity crisis, energy crisis, mass extinction that we are facing are just symptoms of that deeply structural inequality and the development model of extractivism that we have been facing. And these are all symptoms. And if we only look at it through that lens, we will not be able to solve the problem. I think that's where the imbalance of power that we see between global north and global south, between men and women, the lack of resources that we see, the imbalance of those resources and inequality, I think we need to hit hard on those structural measures that we have to take. Otherwise, we will not be able to solve. We are only looking at symptoms. I think that's where we talk about redistributive justice, we talk about equity, and especially when we talk about women, we have to talk about indigenous women, we have to talk about women of color who have been on the front line, and especially when we talk about the cause, it's fossil fuels that has caused the problem. Again, that extractivism model that we are dealing with, we have to really hit hard.
Thank you very much. Elsie.
Catching up on Alexandra's question on urgency, right? Yeah. I think it is a fabulous example of how you, with Women Climate Collective, supported us and helped us to bridge the gap, in fact, between the traditional knowledge and scientific knowledge. I mean, I know L'Oreal works with a lot of scientists and women in that field, but if you have to catapult that urgency forward, I think that's what we were doing in India, and you rightly supported us, bridging the gap, fighting to bridge the gap between traditional knowledge and scientific knowledge. And therefore, we focused on citizen scientists, women citizen scientists, and ordinary lay people working in climate. So citizen scientists who worked on the ground for many years, but were getting left behind. So L'Oreal helped us. Climate Collective helped us to move forward with these ordinary people, which we do call indigenous people. And as the founder of Young Environmentalists and a diver and founder of Ocean School, India, I would like to say women should pick up more armor to fight and get the government on board. Go and beg, plead, get them on the climate scene. So we are trying to get the ocean literacy as a compulsory policy into the curriculum in the schools and colleges, just not at research level, which is kept close, and scientific knowledge and professionalism, but trying to get the government to enforce it, climate education and ocean literacy into the curriculum. Trying to enforce that.
Thank you.
Yes.
So perhaps if I might, just because there are 3 minutes left. So there was something, we are all leaving Climate Week today or tomorrow after all these meetings. So, and there was a really great moment about sisterhood and, supporting each other and the things we can do. Can we finish on that? Can we finish on that incredible energy that we can also feel when we all come together?
Well, I'm happy to, and it's an excellent segue since I was asked to speak about the power and opportunity of philanthropy, so that's actually what I will focus on. By way of introduction, my name is Dr. Ala Murabit. I am the Director of Global Policy Advocacy and Communications at the Gates Foundation, and climate impact and solutions and gender equality are two areas in which we focus quite significantly. And first, I have to commend you because this is such an excellent conversation to be having a week into UN General Assembly to have this much energy at 7 p.m. is incredible. Truly incredible. I mean, I've sat through some conversations this week where I'm pretty sure most of the room was asleep. So really grateful for all of the energy and the passion and the commitment. And I actually think that's where the urgency for climate impact comes from. It is from communities like this and conversations like this. They are so incredibly rich. In the philanthropy space, I think one thing that we can do is we can take risks. It is the beauty of this partnership, right? It is taking a risk where governments can't necessarily, where private sector may not. And of course, we work in partnership with private sector to really create leveraged and blended finance opportunities and to create the kind of ecosystems that are necessary for businesses to thrive. And we look to governments to really scale that. And so at the foundation, I think the urgency that we really see is that unless we're investing in women, everything from women's agricultural development and support to education and literacy and numeracy at the very young school age level, to women's health and reproductive health. I mean, we're in 2024 and a woman or infant dies from birth every 7 seconds. These are some staggering numbers that are only made worse by climate impact. And in this past year alone, we've seen a 27% increase in fragility. So we're seeing billion people, a quarter of the planet, live in fragility, which will only get worse. So I see two things really as vulnerabilities, climate and gender. And if we're going to be a bit more propositional, so that is the number one thing I recommend, is we as philanthropies are eager to be doing more. We are eager for partnerships like this, conversations like this. And I think if we can be a bit more propositional, who are we investing in? What do they need? How do they need it? How can we provide it? Is it that we're missing data? Is it that we're missing conversation? I actually think discussion itself can be a huge mobilizer. Is it that we're missing generational conversation? Is it that we're missing, what are we missing that we can invest in, that we need to take risks on because we are here? And that is a commitment that we make.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So, a conversation to be continued because you asked, you opened up. So I think I would love, or are you doing that, inviting our speakers to have a last word? I do that. So sorry, should decide that. I'm following my friend Sophie. So just really a last word, what you take away from the Women and Climate conversation, Women and Climate to Action a conversation, and how you will go home energized, I hope. So please, you have to take them.
Collaboration, I think that's the word. And I've made this commitment that anyone who I meet, I would listen to them and try to at least make one good connection for them. So I think that's my commitment.
Great, thank you very much. What do you take?
Yeah, I mean, for systems change, we need an ecosystem of advocacy, and we are deeply committed through the work that we do and will continue to do to really build out with everyone here what that constellation looks like and make sure we're really actually building power by having a concrete analysis of what to do and how to achieve it. So very excited from the conversation.
Thank you very much. We'll finish with you.
For me, I think is this on? I go back to basics because I think mine is not so much a commitment as an appeal, because I think part of the problem we have with climate and the environment is how we manufacture, how we produce, and how we consume. So realistically, I would appeal to everybody to think of themselves as individual and how they're consuming, because we're choking our climate, we're choking the planet, and for me, that is what needs to happen, that all of the other stuff doesn't matter if we can't breathe, if we can't produce healthy food, and we can't drink the water. So we all need to change the way we consume to reserve and preserve our environment, whether we're men or women.
Definitely. Thank you so much. I think that is that makes the connection to my point, and I think that we could feel that in this room. Everybody's making a difference. And the support we bring to each other in that space is making the difference. So the effort is never too small. Everything we do, even if we look back at the week, if we look back at our deceptions, at the things that didn't work out, also this week, every effort, every person, every single action counts. And thank you so much for having been here to share that with us.
I'd just like to add my thanks to L'Oréal and Alexandra for the inspiration and all the team that helped put this together. All of our amazing panelists. I am a proud dandy man now. Happy for a while, actually. But the energy and the inspiration in this room has been really inspiring. So it's been a privilege to be here and to be part of this. So, Alexandra, thank you for helping bringing us all together. Thank you, everybody.